Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. She brought me tea, knitted me a scarf, and told me I was like the mother she never had. Then I found the shopping bills in my name. I remember the exact moment. The steam from the teacup was curling in the soft morning light, and the lavender from the backyard was swaying like a slow song through the kitchen window. I held the mug she'd handed me, blue porcelain, the one she said suited me best, and stared at the first letter from the credit company. Balance due $8,742.96. I thought it had to be a mistake. I hadn't used a credit card in over a year. After my husband died, I'd cut back on everything. No more subscriptions, no online shopping, not even the good lotion from the pharmacy. But this wasn't a mistake. It had my name, my address, my social security number. I stood there as the tea cooled in my hands, heart thudding so loud I couldn't hear the birds anymore. I'm 67 years old, widowed. I used to say that without pain, like it was a label. Widowed, retired, mother of one. But it always lived somewhere beneath my ribs. George passed 8 years ago, heart failure in his sleep. A good man. A quiet man. We were married for 39 years. After he died, I floated through days like a ghost in our house. I still folded his flannel shirts for months after. My son, Kevin, asked me to move in with him and his wife 3 years ago. I was hesitant. Every woman deserves her own kitchen, her own windowsill. But my knees were getting worse, and my pension wasn't stretching as far as it used to. The house was too big, too lonely, and their invitation felt warm. Or maybe I just wanted someone to ask me to stay. When I met Melanie, I honestly thought I'd lucked out. She was bright, full of questions. She noticed the tiny things about people, the kind of woman who'd remember your birthday and favorite pie filling. We weren't close at first. There was a polite distance, like a fence with a pretty gate. But she kept opening it. She sat with me during her lunch breaks, made me chamomile before bed. She learned I used to sew and brought out her grandmother's knitting needles, eager to learn. She laughed at my dry jokes. I wasn't used to that. And then one day, she touched my hand and said, "I never had a real mother, but you're what I always imagined one would feel like." I cried that night, quietly, in the guest room. Their house was modest, warm-toned, with maple floors and a grey couch Melanie insisted was stain-resistant. I cooked dinners sometimes, made lists, watered the plants when they forgot. It felt good to be useful. She made me feel wanted. Then things started showing up. Not in a loud way. At first, it was just a new speaker system in the living room. "Kevin's bonus," she said. Then a designer bag on the hall hook, a $300 air fryer. Another work reward. I raised an eyebrow once. "You're doing well for yourselves," I said, trying to make it sound light. She grinned. "Kevin's promotion really helped. Plus, I'm smart with money. You taught me that." The flattery slid into me like warm honey. I felt proud, even a little foolish for doubting. But the boxes didn't stop. Packages arrived almost daily. Shoes, gadgets, kitchen tools still wrapped in their glossy cardboard, a standing mirror that cost more than my old dining set. I once asked her, gently, so gently, whether she thought it was a bit much. She looked at me with that sweet, wounded expression. "Do you think I'm wasteful?" I stumbled over myself to reassure her. I hated how quick I was to doubt her. Still, I started watching more closely. She never asked for money, never touched my purse. She was too smart for that. But one afternoon, I was at the pharmacy and my card was declined. I'd only asked for a small credit bump. To buy a new compression wrap for my knee. Nothing extravagant. The clerk looked at me like I was trying to steal. I smiled politely, cheeks burning, and paid cash. Then I walked straight to the public library and asked to check my credit report. It was worse than I imagined. There were 2 accounts I'd never opened, both maxed out. One had overdue fees. My heart stung as I scrolled the statements. $249. Sephora. $621. Apple. Xylon 199 Neil West Elm. All signed with my name. I walked home slowly. The afternoon sun was beating down, but I couldn't feel anything. My thoughts were dull and loud at the same time. Was it possible? Could she? Back at the house, Melanie had made peach cobbler. She offered me a slice with whipped cream. "Rough day?" she asked, warm and casual. I wanted to believe it wasn't her, but the way she avoided my eyes when I said I'd been to the library, that's when I knew. That night, I sat in my room for hours, staring at the report. How long had she been planning this? What had she said to the banks? Did she pretend to be me? Use my documents? The credit card companies had my signature, but it wasn't mine. I didn't cry. Not that night. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't allow for tears. It just sits inside you, heavy and acidic. I had given her my trust like a gift, and she'd used my name like a password. And I couldn't help but think of my son. Did he know? Did he turn away? Or was he fooled, like I had been? I didn't sleep. But by morning, I had made my first call. I didn't confront her. Not at first. Instead, I called the credit company and asked for everything they had. Application forms, voice authorizations, all of it. I played the frail old lady on the phone. Confused. Shaky. They sent the documents 2 days later. The signature was a decent imitation of mine. Not exact, but close enough that it might fool a stranger. But not me. Then came the audio files. I played them on Kevin's old tablet in my room with headphones on, heart in my throat. "Elaine Monroe," said a young, practiced voice. It wasn't my voice, but she used my name, my birth date, my social security number. She even used my old home address, probably from mail she'd seen. The last line stuck with me. "Yes, I'm opening this card for personal household expenses. No, no one else will use it." She said it like she meant it, like she'd said it a dozen times before. I spent the next week pretending I didn't know, pretending I was still the grateful mother-in-law who thought her scarf-knitting daughter-in-law was an angel. Every time Melanie smiled at me, it felt like a paper cut. I tried to see it from her side. Maybe it started small, a package here, a dinner there. Maybe she told herself she'd pay it back. Maybe she believed her own excuses. She was good at being believable. But the lies were piling up like unopened boxes in the hallway. Kevin didn't notice, or didn't want to. "You okay, Mom?" he asked one night over dinner. He was scooping mashed potatoes like it was any other Tuesday. "I'm all right," I said. "Your knee bothering you?" "It's everything else that's bothering me." He looked up. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, then said, "Do you and Melanie talk about finances? Credit cards?" His shoulders tensed. "We're fine, Mum." "Are you sure?" There was a pause. Then he laughed softly. "She told me you were starting to worry about money, that you thought she was spending too much." "She told you that?" "She said you were worried you'd be a burden." I stared at him. The nicest kind of liar. That's what she was. That night, I took photos of every unopened box in the guest room closet. The one she said was full of donations. Designer boots. A coffee machine still in plastic. A pair of headphones I knew cost more than a car payment. Then I opened the laptop. I don't like computers, but I knew how to Google a lawyer. I found one with a kind face and a long list of credentials. His name was Martin Lee, and he offered a free 30-minute consultation. I printed everything: the statements, the application forms, even the photo of the guest room closet. When I walked into his office 3 days later, Martin didn't treat me like a silly old woman. He listened. He asked real questions. And when I showed him Melanie's signature, he nodded and said, "She committed fraud, Mrs. Monroe, identity theft." The words landed like cold stones in my chest, heavy, undeniable. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked gently. I didn't answer right away. I thought of Kevin, of how much he adored her, of how he'd smile when she walked into the room. Then I thought of the look on the pharmacy clerk's face when my card was declined. "Yes," I said. A week passed before the detective came to the house. I told Kevin it was about a neighborhood safety survey. Melanie wasn't home. He left for work that morning, like nothing was wrong. I showed the officer everything. She took notes, nodded often, asked me to send digital copies of the evidence. She promised I wouldn't have to confront Melanie directly, unless I wanted to. "I don't," I said. It felt cowardly. But I knew if I looked into her eyes, she might say just the right thing and make me question my own reality. I wasn't going to give her that chance. That Friday, Kevin came home early. I was folding laundry, one of my little ways to stay useful. He dropped his briefcase, looked around the living room, and then said, too casually, "Did something happen this week?" I folded a towel. "Why?" "Melanie's been different. She asked if you were mad at her. Did something happen between you two?" I stared down at the towel, willing myself not to cry. "She used my name to open 2 credit cards, Kevin." His face shifted. "What?" "She's nearly $9,000 in debt, in my name. I found out last month. I've been working with a lawyer." "No." "Mom." He stepped back, blinking. "Are you sure? That doesn't sound like—" It was her voice on the authorization tape, her handwriting, my social security number. He rubbed the back of his neck, then sat down hard on the couch. "Jesus." There was a long silence. "I thought she loved me," I said softly. "I thought I mattered to her." Kevin looked like a boy again, small, shaken. "She said, she told me you were like a second mom. She meant that, Mom. I swear. But I don't know what to say right now." "You don't have to say anything." He didn't try to defend her. He didn't raise his voice. He just sat there, ashamed. I could almost hear his heart breaking. Mine already had. The official letter came 2 days later. Melanie opened the mailbox and stood on the porch reading it. From the kitchen window, I watched her lips move as she read the words. Fraud. Police report. Pending charges. She looked up at the window and met my eyes. For the first time in months, she didn't smile. I didn't look away. Melanie didn't say a word for the rest of that day. She cooked dinner, washed dishes, took a shower and blow-dried her hair like she had somewhere to be, even though she didn't leave the house. She moved like someone trying to stay normal while the ground shifted beneath her. Kevin was quiet too. He avoided looking at either of us. He drank 2 beers with dinner and barely touched his plate. The 3 of us sat there like a painting, a nice little family in a quiet kitchen, pretending nothing was cracking at the corners. The next morning, she knocked on my bedroom door. "Elaine." Her voice was soft, girlish. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see if she'd knock again. She did. Twice. When I opened the door, she was holding 2 mugs of tea, lavender chamomile, my favorite. She hadn't made it for me in weeks. I thought maybe. She handed me the cup like a peace offering. I took it, but didn't sip. We sat in the living room, her legs tucked under her like she always did when she wanted to look innocent. I got the letter, she said, looking down at her tea. And I wanted to say, I'm sorry. She sounded sincere. Her eyes even glistened. But I'd seen her rehearse tears before. Once when she returned a sweater she'd worn to a party and didn't want to pay for. I remembered the way she'd dabbed her eyes at the register, then winked at me on the way out. I never meant for it to get that far, she went on. It was just a temporary thing. I was going to pay it back. You're the only one I felt safe using. My stomach turned. I made a mistake, she whispered. Can't we handle this as a family? Quietly? I mean, the cops. Elaine, that's serious. She reached for my hand. I didn't move it. You called me Mom 3 days before you opened that second card, I said. You brought me flowers on a Sunday and told me I gave you a home. Then you used my name to buy a marble coffee table. Her face flushed. It wasn't personal, I swear. That's the part that hurts the most. She tried to cry, really tried. But her voice cracked in the wrong places and her eyes stayed too dry. Kevin doesn't need to know all the details, she said suddenly. We can figure something out, right? You've always been so understanding. Kevin already knows. That silenced her. She stormed upstairs. I heard drawers opening, a suitcase zipping. For a minute I thought she'd leave then and there. Instead, she stayed. 3 more days. 3 unbearable, silent, tense days. Then on Thursday, a police officer showed up at the door. Not in uniform, plain clothes. Polite, professional. She asked to speak to Melanie in private. I didn't listen in. I didn't need to. Afterward, Melanie came downstairs with her purse, wearing a too-big coat that didn't belong to her. Her face was pale. No makeup. Lips chapped from stress. Kevin was already home. He stood at the bottom of the stairs like he didn't know which woman to reach for. She walked up to him slowly. I didn't tell you everything, but I love you. He didn't speak. Tell your mom I didn't mean to hurt her. She's right here, he said quietly. She turned to me. I expected one final performance. One last, you're like the mother I never had. Instead, she nodded. Once. Tight and tired. And then she left. Kevin didn't come to dinner that night. I didn't press him. Grief makes people quiet. Betrayal makes them smaller. He came into my room around midnight, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Was any of it real? He asked. I think she loved parts of you, I said carefully, and parts of me. But she loved what we gave her more. He sat on the floor at the edge of my bed. His eyes were red. I should have seen it. I should have. You wanted to believe in someone. That's not a weakness, Kevin. That's love. He cried. Not loud, not boyish, just slow, silent tears. I reached for his hand, held it in both of mine. For the first time in years, he leaned his head against my knee the way he used to as a boy. A week later, I got the call from Martin, my lawyer. They're going to prosecute. It's textbook identity fraud, and they've got more than enough evidence. Most likely a plea deal. She won't see jail time, but her record's not going to be clean. Good, I said. He hesitated. Do you want restitution? We can file for it? I looked around the room, the guest room, now officially mine. The closet had been cleared out. The boxes were gone. The silence in the house was clean again. No, I said. I don't want anything from her. I'd already taken back the one thing she'd stolen and couldn't buy, my name. 2 weeks after Melanie left, I finally cleaned out the hall closet. Her coats, shoes, that ridiculous faux fur scarf she bought with my name, they were all still hanging there like she might come back for them. But she didn't. Kevin didn't stop me when I packed them into black trash bags. He just stood silently in the doorway, then went back to fixing the dripping kitchen faucet. That was his way of grieving, repairing things. Mine was quieter. I spent a lot of time at the window those first few weeks, just watching the street, the mail truck, the neighbor's dog barking at squirrels. It felt strange, being still in a house that had been full of so much motion, so many fake smiles, so many lies draped in politeness. But the silence didn't hurt the way I thought it would. In fact, it was honest. I started reading again. Needlework, too. My fingers were slow, but the rhythm was soothing. Thread in, thread out. I made a small quilt from old shirts Kevin had outgrown years ago. He found it on his bed one night after work. Didn't say anything, but I saw the way he folded it neatly every morning afterward. That's how love looks after betrayal. Small, careful gestures. Nothing flashy. Just steady hands. One Saturday morning, I sat down with a clean sheet of paper and wrote out everything I wanted. Not revenge, not pity, just clarity. My own bank account, not tied to Kevin. A lockbox for personal documents. My name removed from any of their shared financial records. A library card in my name again. I'd let the last one expire. I called Martin and asked if he could recommend a financial counselor for seniors. He did. Her name was Olivia, sharp as a tack and kind without being sweet. We met twice. She taught me how to track my credit, freeze unnecessary accounts, and write dispute letters in proper legal format. "You're not just recovering from fraud," she said during our second session. "You're reclaiming authority." That word, authority, sat in me like warmth. I liked it. Kevin and I never spoke about the case again. He read the updates when they came, but I could tell he didn't want to relive it. I didn't either. But one night, he came home with a small envelope. Inside was a photo. Me, holding Kevin on the front steps of our old house. He was maybe 4. I was wearing a sun hat, laughing. The picture wasn't framed, just gently tucked into the card. On the back, he'd written, "You've always protected me. I'm sorry I didn't protect you this time." I cried in the pantry where he couldn't see me. Then I made lasagna for dinner, because that's what love does. It feeds, even after heartbreak. The final court update came in May. Melanie took a plea deal. No jail time, but 3 years probation, mandatory financial restitution to the credit card companies, and a permanent mark on her record. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't want to see her face. I'd already seen everything I needed. One of the officers called afterward and said, "You came out of this stronger than most people do." I thanked her. But in truth, I didn't feel strong. I just felt intact, like something had been cracked open, then healed, but never in quite the same shape. I didn't want my old self back. That woman who confused kindness with trust, who thought warmth in a kitchen meant warmth in a heart. I wanted this version of myself, the woman who knew how to read fine print, who didn't hand out her name like a gift, who could look in the mirror and say, "You were right to believe in people." And even more right to stop. Kevin offered to set me up in my own place when the settlement ended. He even showed me 2 little senior units not far from the house. I smiled and said no. "I like being here," I told him, "but I need a few things to change." "Like what?" "I want that little shed in the backyard converted. Just a bed, a table, a kettle, my own space. He looked surprised, then nodded. You've got it, Mum. He built it with his own hands. Took him a month. On the last day, he planted lavender just outside the window. Same kind I'd stared at the day I opened that credit card bill. It's been almost a year since the letter came. The lavender outside my window is in full bloom again. A little overgrown, but I don't mind. I like the way it spills out of the bed, like it has somewhere to be, like it's unapologetically taking up space. I know the feeling. The backyard shed is more than a shed now. Kevin and I worked on it bit by bit after Melanie was gone. He laid the flooring, I chose the paint. Pale yellow walls, white trim, soft curtains that catch the breeze just right. It's only a few steps from the house, but it feels like a different world. Mine. There's a twin bed with a crocheted quilt, a small reading lamp, a kettle that whistles when it's ready. I keep my own mugs now. Blue porcelain, the one she used to say suited me. I still use it. It suits me more now than ever. No one brings me tea anymore, but I find that I enjoy making it for myself. Kevin comes by often. He never stays long unless I ask him to. We've settled into something more adult now, something closer to peers than parent and child. We don't fill silences unless they ask for filling. Sometimes he brings groceries, sometimes just company. Last month, we planted tomatoes together. He stayed for lunch and watched me mend a pillowcase. She took a lot from us, he said out of nowhere. I nodded. She did. But she gave us something too, he added. Distance. Perspective. I smiled. A shed. He laughed. That big, open laugh I hadn't heard in months. It was good to hear it again. For a while, I thought I'd lost him to guilt, or to grief over the woman he thought she was. But no. He's still here. Still my boy. Melanie never reached out again. I sometimes wonder if she's moved far away, or if she's telling her version of the story somewhere else. How I overreacted. How it wasn't that serious. How she was just trying to help. I don't need to correct her version. I don't care who believes her, because I know what's true. She used my name to open doors I never asked for, but I used my name to close the ones that needed closing. And I walk through my own doors now. A few weeks ago, Olivia, the financial advisor, invited me to speak on a senior advocacy panel at the local library. Just a little thing, she said. Share your story. Show people they don't have to stay quiet. I almost said no. Public speaking makes my hands shake. But I remembered how small I felt at the pharmacy that day, how shame made my spine shrink. So I said yes. I wore the scarf I'd knitted with Melanie that first winter, back when I still believed her every word. It felt like taking back something that was mine. I stood in front of a room full of strangers and told them the truth. About trust. About betrayal. About fraud. But more than anything, about resilience. I'm not a victim, I told them. I'm a woman who chose to reclaim what was hers. A few people clapped. One woman cried. Afterwards, someone slipped a note into my hand. Thank you for giving me permission to stop pretending. I kept that note. It sits folded in my jewelry box next to a photo of George. In some ways, I'm lonelier now, but I'm also more free. No one watches over my shoulder. No one calls me silly or fragile or forgetful. No one brings me tea with flattery in the steam. I don't need to be someone's mother figure to matter. I don't need to be needed to feel whole. I've started journaling. At night, when the wind pushes the curtains gently inward, I write small truths in a spiral notebook. Things like, you are not foolish for trusting. You are only foolish if you never trust yourself again. Or, dignity doesn't come from being loved. It comes from knowing who you are when love disappears. One night, Kevin brought home a woman. Just for dinner, he said. Her name was Emily. Kind eyes, quiet voice. She brought dessert and asked if I liked lemon bars. I did. They talked in the kitchen afterward. I overheard Emily ask, "Your mum seems strong." Kevin paused. "Yeah, she is." It was simple, but it filled me up. I've lived long enough to know you don't need applause to feel powerful. Sometimes all it takes is your own child seeing you clearly. Melanie thought my name was just a way into luxury, but my name is more than a line on a credit application. It's the name George whispered when he held my hand before he passed. It's the name my son scribbled on homemade birthday cards with backward ease. It's the name I signed when I filed the report, when I hired the lawyer, when I took my life back, one paper at a time. Elaine Monroe, a woman over 67. Quiet, yes, but never weak. The shed smells like lavender and wood polish. Outside, the tomatoes are coming in strong. There's a breeze tonight, and the kettle is nearly ready. I make 1 cup of tea. I sip it slowly. And for the first time in a very long time, I belong entirely to myself.